Good afternoon, good evening. We would like to welcome you to this new edition on IICA Dialogues, Dialogues of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. I do not want to take too much time introducing this event, but I would like to tell our special guest who is with us and will participate in this dialogue with the Director General of IICA, Dr. Manuel Otero, that this dialogue will be broadcast via IICA media in Spanish and in English with simultaneous interpretation. And connected today, we have technical experts, representatives of IICA, and people related to matters involving diplomacy, cooperation, and agriculture in 34 countries of the Americas, as well as Spain, where IICA has an office, which is the liaison office with the European Union. So we would like to welcome you all parties in our hemisphere and in Europe. Welcome to this new dialogue that we have been holding in IICA ever since 2020, early during the COVID-19 pandemic, a year in which IICA transformed its activities, turning it much more digital in order to continue having an impact throughout the hemisphere. And in this case, this IICA dialogue, welcoming everyone, has been entitled Challenges of Cooperation in Latin America and the Caribbean in Face of the New Global Context. Our special guest today, together with the Director General Manuel Otero, is a very special guest. No one but Ambassador Gustavo Martínez Pandiani, a diplomat with great experience in trade and cooperation, with extensive diplomatic experience. And he is Undersecretary of Affairs for Latin America and the Caribbean in Argentina, National Coordinator of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, the pro tempore chair, of which is exercised by the Republic of Argentina. He is currently in San Jose, Costa Rica, and we are broadcasting this event live through social media, IICA social media. He has been so kind to visit the IICA facilities and learn about all the new activities at the IICA headquarters. He is currently in San Jose representing the government of the Republic of Argentina, attending the taking office of the new president of the Republic of Costa Rica. So with this introduction, we welcome you wherever you may be, and we thank all the IICA technicians and technical experts, the protocol staff, and Luis Eugenio Bellando, all the IICA colleagues that have joined us. We open up this dialogue that will be, I hope, a very frank, open dialogue, as this will be of an academic nature, and we will explain the rationale for this in a moment. This is a very important element. And obviously, we will start with a question I have for both of you, in fact, particularly for Ambassador Martínez Pandiani, and that is, what is the current role of South-South cooperation in this new global context? What do you think its relevance is, and what impacts, what benefits could this have on our countries? Thank you very much. Welcome, Ambassador. Thank you, Guido. First of all, let me greet all those that have joined us through the different platforms. I would like to thank my friend Manuel Otero, Director General of IICA, not only for this invitation, but also for his usual warmth and for sharing this academic view of the world that has nothing to do with books, but instead with our favorite soccer club, the racing club, which is also known as the academia. But then let me quickly go into respond to your question. This question perhaps is more of a paradigm in this cycle you have started quite some time ago. The pandemic, and after the pandemic, the phenomena we are experiencing currently have led us to repose basically all disciplines. All disciplines have been challenged by this world we have been experiencing over the last 2 or 3 years. And obviously agriculture is not foreign to this. Logical. We can expect that agriculture has been challenged together with agricultural cooperation in this world, that this new world that has now started. We feel we are headed in some direction without realizing that future has already started. But we are at the crossroads of two waves. When we look at the ocean, we see the beginning of one wave, and then after the previous wave is ending, you can really not distinguish the point in where one ends and the other one begins. And that is what is happening to us in our relationship with technology, in our relationship with the different aspects of collective living. We have no idea where the old things end and the new things start, because that concrete point really does not exist. And I believe that technical cooperation is precisely fixing that uncertainty. We have a classic cooperation model that ceased to exist and that resists to disappear, but we have the demands of a new world with a different view through the beneficiaries of that cooperation that leads us all to rethink technical cooperation. The first thing that has happened is that we have changed, or we should change still, the way in which we think of cooperation right from the onset. I remember for many decades that technical cooperation was conceived as a discipline of experts. Only the experts had to express opinion on what was needed in the area of cooperation. And one thing that is changing significantly is that cooperation, aside from a matter of expertise, is a social fact. And if you start a given cooperation project, and you start it without really understanding the origin itself of cooperation, you do not understand what is happening at the bottom, is a big mistake, because the idea of cooperating has to naturally must arise bottom up, not from top to bottom as used to be originally. A group of experts used to meet and would say before, okay, Antigua and Barbuda would benefit from our doing as X and Y thing for irrigation. And that was the starting point. That approach is no longer used in practice, because that project perhaps does not necessarily reflect the true needs and the priorities, particularly of that recipient of cooperation. The first thing an expert in cooperation has to do is to ask, not tell, not say that through their expertise they know more than whoever will be receiving the cooperation. The first thing to be done is to listen. And Manuel Otero was so kind as to work on these matters with me when I was an ambassador in the Caribbean, and we realized that the first thing we had to do to put into practice a project that we thought was a very good idea was to check whether that good idea was not just our idea. So what we did was ask. We went out, we asked, we spoke to those that were going to be the beneficiaries, the recipients, and that is where we realized if that project was going to be a good one or not, and how it could be implemented or put into practice. So going directly into your answer, Guido, cooperation continues to be an essential activity in life among countries and economic and social progress of populations. But what we have to do is understand that, at least for a long time, it is not appropriate to think that this is a matter of expertise, technical expertise, foreign to the life of society. No, what happens at the base of society justifies cooperation. If technocracy is a whim, that will not take us anywhere. And that is why we have to see the merge of these two whales. Technology in line with society begins before the project starts. We need to involve the recipients right from day one. What you were commenting is very appropriate, and I would like to ask the Director General for his general comments also, because in general, he always refers to cooperation in these words. He has He has been working on this at IICA, and this has become part of the IICA's DNA, of the new DNA, and that is the need for modern technical cooperation intimately related to what you were saying. So I would like to hear the words of the Director General on this matter. Well, thank you, Guido. It is an honor to have you, my dear friend Gustavo, with us today, and to share the passion for the same a soccer club, our colors, same colors, and the same principles and ideals of what new development strategy should be. I believe that Gustavo very clearly characterized this cooperation we are giving rise to and that we want to drive here at IICA. I would like to highlight some points that you mentioned. Social-centered activity and cooperation, where the processes are much more important than the outcomes. Basically, bringing together the networks and consortia is very important because we lose this line of the cooperant and the recipient. So instead of going with a recipe, something prescribed, no, the secret of new cooperation is try to pose the correct questions to empower those countries that definitely want to be protagonists of new technical cooperation, and therefore I believe the secret is to work together. At IICA, we have been saying that at this crossing of waves, we need an IICA that from the Americas, aside from strengthening the social tissue of our world, we should look out at the whole world because we have a connection with the whole world, and we must drive this collective action. That is so important. This requires an effort of the public and private sector, universities, the NGOs. No one can be left behind, and that is something we insist on. And lastly, IICA is the bridge. IICA is permanently bringing together subject matters and actors. Later, I would like to refer to this idea that from Barbados, we have created, we have thought of Procaribe, and this is about time to replicate this in other vulnerable regions too. But I would like to leave it at that, Guido, if this is fine with you.
Yes, I agree. There are a few questions that are arising that I would like to share with you, but I would like to take advantage of what you both were saying, so that from the collective action and out of this vision that Gustavo brought over of that new cooperation, because recently the government of the Argentinian Republic, within the framework of the pro tempore secretariat of CELAC, we have the different topics in which it's important for countries to work together. And topics that are vital somehow for the reality in which we live and that we are in. One is climate change. The other topic is to achieve or work so that economic recovery is high growth, high expansion recovery, and which is at the same time socially inclusive and environmentally sustainable. So obviously I believe that both things are related, the work on technical cooperation and the work of the promotion to collective action, and these priorities that have been presented here by Argentina. I would like to ask you about this. Well, within the scope of what Guido's mentioning, which is the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, in January we had a plenary meeting with the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, and that way we worked on a plan of action for 2022 that has 15 priorities identified. Those 15 priorities are absolutely different to what they would have been if the world had not been through the process it has been through since the beginning of COVID-19. And even though this pandemic has brought upon disastrous results, not only in terms of the loss of human lives, but also regarding the stress that was placed on the healthcare system and economies in the countries. Beyond the tragedies, it has also left us some lessons learned. If there's something that we can extract as a lesson learned for the future of this pandemic is to learn from mistakes. Not only do we learn when the other one is wrong, we mostly learn when it's the time to acknowledge the error. And in that regard, our region has an opportunity based on what has happened, and it is that this shouldn't happen with food security as what happened with COVID or with the lack of vaccines. The region has clearly understood, and this is clearly reflected within the framework of CELAC. First of all, we have to strengthen our own systems, healthcare systems and food security systems. Because when we have these terrible global catastrophes, the region is not necessarily the priority of other parts of the world. And we hope to have the assistance and solidarity which reaches, but sometimes it comes a little bit late. And in the region, we have before us that challenge that we need to understand that we cannot wait any longer. We have to ensure for ourselves as a region a basis that does not depend from the will of others. COVID-19 showed us a very unequal world. COVID-19 showed dramatic differences among the different parts of the world, and within those, also dramatic differences. And it's clear that the most vulnerable sectors of our society pay the highest price compared to the sectors that had more resources. This that happened with the sanitary system, with the availability of vaccines, with availability of tests. In due time now, we hardly remember that, but let's think about it and how hard it was for the smaller countries in the region to get tests, to even get the possibility of a diagnosis. It was not even the vaccine, the test in itself was a challenge. This that happened can occur also if we do not work well, and if we do not work together with prestigious institutions such as IICA within the scope of food security. We cannot wait for a food crisis to arrive. The war that we are currently suffering also shows us that we really need to organize ourselves differently. We have to do it now, right away, so that the same thing that happened with the vaccines doesn't happen again. So I believe that the whole region, all of Latin America and the Caribbean specifically, have to quickly work on this together, maximize our assets, and together with those sectors that are more vulnerable, for example, to climate change. When Argentina was appointed as the president of CELAC, the Argentinian president, President Fernandez, as the pro-tempore president of CELAC, said, I am going to make my first trip as pro-tempore president to the Caribbean. I am not going to visit the large CELAC countries, quote unquote, but I'm going to go to the countries that have suffered the most in these recent times. He went to Barbados, where he, in addition, met with the first prime ministers of St. Vincent, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, and which are countries small in population, but very big as to their desire to move forward. And we work together with them on this design of food security with Latin America and the Caribbean, cease to be a geographical expression and are transformed into a political expression. Oftentimes we say Latin America and the Caribbean, or the Caribbean and Latin America, as I prefer to say after I have been in the region. But we do not say it really understanding the depth and political implications we see it as a geographical continuity, merely geography. IICA is nowadays one of those institutions that it has its specific presence in each one of these territories. One of the few, very few institutions in the hemisphere can say that they have an office in each of these territories, in each of these islands, in each of these countries. That value that IICA has, which is not symbolic, it's a concrete value. It's being there, it's listening. It is perhaps the main geopolitical capital that this institution has. I remember being an ambassador in several of these countries that I mentioned. When I traveled for meetings, support was given to me by IICA. You have representatives in almost all these islands, and all of them have a specific relationship with the government, NGOs, with the rural people. And member states of CELAC not always have a presence like that. So I believe that the time has come to work very closely as possible, without any type of exclusion, without differences, political differences, ideological differences. These have to be left aside, because pandemic or hunger do not discriminate in the borders of the countries. These are phenomena that just move forward, and they do not ask, what do you think about that? This is perhaps the lesson learned from the pandemic. Work in a coordinated manner, in a regional coordination that is not just a coordination when there is a natural catastrophe or an unfortunate occurrence. This is the time for food security to be the challenge of all. And when I say all, I really mean all. And I think that IICA has a lot to offer there. Director, you wanted to say something? You saw that I was kind of nervous? No, I was thinking of the following. Well, I was listening to Gustavo. He was talking about food security. He was talking about facing with that collective action, perhaps some very important needs. And I think that now when we speak about food security, and as IICA's Director General wants to say, that food security cannot leave aside the sector in which IICA has its expertise or tradition and knowledge, which is agriculture. This obviously gives me the leeway to another question, which is what role would you assign to this new cooperation for agriculture as a strategic pillar for food security, strengthening nutritional security, guaranteeing environmental sustainability? That joint work, what characteristics should it have so that it has more and more impact, for it to be bigger, for it to reach more and more countries that really need it urgently? I think that out of the previous words of Martin, I would like to highlight a couple of concepts. First of all, COVID taught us that we cannot continue running behind. We're always running behind things that happen. And we have to be the main actors of our own destiny, and to try to understand in this uncertain and unforeseeable world that agriculture comes to be a strategic element, a strategic factor. Second, ideologies. Farmers do not care about ideologies. They just want a better quality of life of their families in rural areas. And obviously they need adaptive technologies, they need better education and health for their families. They need things to be simpler so that they can become more a part of this field as real citizens. There were a few pending items in our continent. For IICA, what we would like to do is to promote regional programs to be close to these farmers, to whom who are the ones that we say they have to be in the middle, center of all discussions. We have 16.5 million farmers that need new public policies to become empowered. And thus the self-criticism process that we're living now, it needs to be reorganized in several aspects. So in that aim of being a protagonist, there are several topics that are demanding our attention. This has to be evidently turning us into freer countries, because without that freedom, we are not going to be able to understand what the future looks like. And here I optimistically look at this topic of entrepreneurs, this revolution that's occurring in rural areas, where young people and women are the subjects of their own transformation. And trade is also important. We're tired of repeating that intra-block trade is only 14.1 of what we export, where Europe is more than 60, and in NAFTA, they are at more than 45%. We need to go back on trade. And in this next generation of public policies for family farmers, we have clear words as associations. We need more and more cooperatives, better cooperatives, more and better policies. Always understanding that the environment has to be an ally of the cause, and where the word productivity and environment have to be parts of one single concept, which is this new focus of sustainable development, and that's where we are working. Thank you. And all these ideas, and I go back to Gustavo, they are somehow present in the priorities of Argentina in your as president of CELAC. Food production, scientific exchanges, promotion of resilience, agricultural development based on technologies and capacities. This gives us the idea, perhaps I might be mistaken, but I would like to ask you. I don't think I'm mistaken that our continent has for these topics all the answers at hand that perhaps we did not have at the beginning of the pandemic, based on what Gustavo was saying, to face the health issue. But what I would like to say, first of all, Guido, and this is something that Manuel mentioned a few minutes ago, which is related to this idea of answers and questions. In our way of thinking, we normally believe that what is important is having the right answers. And in my experience, oftentimes having the right answers is not a guarantee of success. The most important thing is to have the right questions, because you can have the right answer, but in a wrong, irrelevant question. And oftentimes it has happened in Latin America and the Caribbean, that we have believed that we have the right answers, and perhaps we had them, but these were not the best questions. So beyond feeling this pressure for having everything solved, and that we have to be very clear in everything that is going to happen, we need to focus a little bit more on the questions and less on the answers, because answers are collective constructions. Answers are not owned by governments themselves. Answers are in the power of societies that get integrated, but we have NGOs, the civil societies, unions, professional associations. We have international organizations such as IICA, but also many others. And all of these actors together might probably develop the right answers. But there's a step before that, which is the step of the questions. I believe that the questions are the ones that need to be reposed in the region. It's clear we have a coincidence here, because the plan of action for CELAC for 2022 and the agenda, which is for most of institutions, but of course IICA has marked in view towards the future. We all agree that nutrition, food, access to public services, education are the areas where we need to focus the effort, not only of the state, but as Manuel said, private sector also. Now, what we cannot do, in my opinion, is the mistake of excess pride. That is to believe that once we have a way of seeing that, or a model, that model is unchangeable.
The only thing true in the new world is uncertainty. We cannot link ourselves to solutions that are absolutely predetermined for situations that are yet to arise. Because what the world is showing us is that we need to improve our adaptability and the merger between science, research, science and technique and technology, scientific aspects merely, and the ability to innovate. That is the combination we need to put at the surface of public policies. It will be very difficult for the plan we designed today for the next 12 months is untouched. Sometimes we criticize a lot in these sways we have, these back and forths in Latin America. Let us get used to it because the new world is full of uncertainty. And nobody could have thought 6 months ago that we would have a war that would jeopardize a good part of the food system for a good part of the world. If we had had a stringent model, a strict model, unflexible, we would be in very bad shape. And in Argentina, and I know that Manuel, aside from being Director General of this institute, is a fellow citizen, but we are integrating the new, the modern thing, innovative things, businesses working with the Institute, Microsoft talent, breeding technologies within the institution itself. But that has not led IICA to forget the humanitarian angle of its cooperation, the human side, because technology is not something foreign to man. Technology is always an instrument, is a vehicle, a means, a tool. And if it is not used with the human side, the social side, with the look that focuses on the needs of the moment, we are going to end up with a technocratic model that will sometimes work, sometimes not. So from CELAC, we have proposed to all 32 member countries that social angle should be the angle of cooperation and coordination, not only when something occurs in a given country. No, CELAC and ECLAC and IICA and the FAO and a series of other institutions with CARICOM, with SICA, should become an instrument of articulation, but with social content, because what is happening is not just a matter of policies or technical decisions. We need to make some decisions that have a strong social content. Where are we headed to as a model of justice within society? What is the model in Latin America and the Caribbean? Sometimes we believe the false idea that we do not have the same language. 14 different countries out of the 32 speak English in CELAC. So 14 out of all 32 members speak English, and one speaks French. The rest speak Spanish. That difference in languages represents an additional challenge. But when we look at the issues we have, they are quite similar, the same problems. The poor families in Frenchtown in Jamaica have the same problems as a poor family in the rural area of Colombia, or of an urban family in Lima or Buenos Aires. We have problems with access to sanitary service, low education levels and systems, a nutritional diet which has been very limited for the poor population. So we should not lose this view of an institute as the one that has welcomed me so kindly today. What happens to us happens because we are a social group. We do not just need to find the correct buttons to push to correct everything. No, this human view that IICA has, thanks to Manuel and the work done by IICA, will be a guarantee that we will not confuse questions with answers. Very important comment. Since you were mentioning diversity of the countries, members of CELAC, and that the countries of the Americas continent that are at this event called IICA Dialogue. We are in contact with 35 countries, Costa Rica and 34, from Spain to Canada to Chile, and we are broadcasting live today and is reaching our audience through Facebook in Spanish as well as IICA YouTube in English. And for those that have recently joined this event today, we are listening to Ambassador Gustavo Martínez Pandiani, Subsecretary of Latin American and Caribbean Affairs and National Coordinator of CELAC, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean Countries, and of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Culture, Argentina, who is currently in San Jose for the taking office of the new president of Costa Rica yesterday. Both have shared very many clear concepts. I would like to ask you now, still pending, I guess, is an explanation, a reminder that could serve as a seed for the future as to the experience of Apicaribe that you both enjoyed. And I would like to ask you first, what spaces do you foresee as areas to increase cooperation between Argentina and IICA in benefit of the more vulnerable economies in the Americas? And then I will offer the floor to Manuel. But Argentina has had a very close relationship with IICA, especially more recently, thanks to the work done by Manuel. There was an MOU signed between the government of Argentina and the Institute that set the foundation for cooperating to cooperate. Basically, Argentina has always provided technical cooperation. Traditionally, for many decades, Argentina, above all, in agri-food areas and agribusiness areas and productive development, together with other areas, has experience and expertise. We have our accuracies and our mistakes to share with you. So we work a lot in the area of agriculture. We do not believe we know it all and that we have all the answers and that we are the champions. No, we do have a lot of experience. We do have a lot of years of cooperation with the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and productive areas and in agriculture in general. Now, what do we see? What do we want through this memorandum of understanding with the IICA? Well, to enable that cooperation, not only technically, because this is perhaps the point in the hemisphere where more specific knowledge already exists in the area of agriculture, but we also want to further enable it in political terms. Through this network, the IICA has all along the Caribbean and their areas of influence. That network does not exist in the countries individually, and no matter how hard they want to share their experiences in cooperation, we always need a bit more fuel to reach the goal. And that was the rationale behind the MOU we signed not long ago. And it was this spirit that allowed us to kick off together with Manuel. I was at the time the ambassador in Bridgetown, but the famous program called Apicaribe. This was a honey production program, and allow me to share the copyright with my friend from Apicaribe. This was a concept that he had a brainstorming activity we had. He launched it out, and I caught it in a combined word like that, and we could express what we wanted. We wanted it to be regional cooperation. It started in a given country, but our focus was always regional, so that the project could be shared and replicated in several countries. So when experts travel from Argentina, which is what we do, we wanted to share that expertise through our technical experts. We could have a regional impact. And instead of just going to cooperate in Barbados, we wanted to share this with St. Lucia and with St. Kitts and Nevis and with other countries, Dominica, yes. So this was a regional concept. And grassroots work. We thought of it with Manuel like that. Apicaribe was a concept where the stars are the producers, the beekeepers, the producers that are usually small cooperatives. The Caribbean knew how to do apiculture and beekeeping for quite some time, but it was affected very much by hurricanes and other weather activities. With the hurricanes back in the 1990s, their production was very much affected. And we started to work with them very actively. We created not only new activities, but we brought new people into that area of exploitation, particularly youth and women. And this is something that is of great interest to us also, and we share IICA's agenda in this. We want to create opportunities of employment, not only by sharing technical experience. We want that to generate jobs, because countries need more jobs. They need people to exist with their effort, with their culture of labor, and that has to do with self-esteem, with generating a strong entity that will allow those countries not only to focus on migrating, get out of there and look for a better place. No, this project, Apicaribe, is a very successful project, by the way, and Manuel and I are very proud to say that it moved along very fast, obviously with its limitations, limited funding, but rapid response. And let me share with you a public challenge here to my friend Manuel. We should think of replicating this quickly and strongly in Central America, where I believe the conditions are appropriate. We are ready, my dear friend Manuel, to hold hands again and work together with the expertise of both partners, our country and the Institute, to see how we can adapt Apicaribe to turn it into Apicentral. But I will leave the creativity to my friend.
I'm sure Manuel would like to say something, but I wanted to remind our participants of the program or initiative of Apicaribe that had the support of Argentinian specialists in apiculture for testing and marketing the products. This was a very important program that helped us strengthen the bee industry, bee honey, and increase the productivity of beehives in these 4 countries mentioned by Gustavo: Barbados, Dominica, St. Lucia, and St. Kitts and Nevis. Manuel, please. Yes, well, the first thing that I would like to say is that I would like to pick up the glove here and publicly say on behalf of all IICA officers that based on the experience of Apicaribe, where it has been proven that oftentimes technical cooperation is not the same as a lot of $1 million. It's also attitude, it's will, and it's putting the parts together. We would require very good technical experts from IICA, and before that, a request by the Caribbean countries, and with the ambassador at that time, due to the current position they have, IICA offices must expand this, and aside from keeping it in the Caribbean, taking it to Central America for this and for other chains. So I would like to say that we are ready to go out on the field for this new challenge. If you allow me, I wanted to make a few comments that our continent is a young continent. First point there. It is also a green continent. We have the resources, we have water, we have soil, we have biodiversity. Third, this is a continent of peace, and this is sacred. This is something that should be not possible to waver because it's been hard. And we're giving an example to the world that oftentimes criticizes Latin America and the Caribbean, but we are a peaceful air zone. We have several other issues that we're trying to solve, but we do not have war amongst ourselves. And in this room that we're sitting down here, we signed peace treaties for Central America. So IICA also has that in our DNA. We are a heterogeneous continent with large exporters living with other countries that are totally vulnerable. So that's why it's basic to think in the dry Central American corridor, thinking about Haiti, think about Caribbean states. And I am convinced that as Argentinian, there is no country in the world that has a stock of technology like the one that Argentina has. And it has been proven with Prohuerta and other productive chains where we can build bridges for sustainable development for peace. So I reiterate the commitment of IICA to work on these cooperation and organizations. I was going to mention the case of Prohuerta as another great cooperation program which allowed thousands of families to have access to food produced by themselves. Thanks to the collaboration between Canada, Haiti, and Argentina. And afterwards, obviously, thinking about programs together with INTA, the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock and Fisheries of Argentina, and IICA to develop good practices in relation to dairy production in Central America, and think about many other projects together. That is why we posed this question. And if you allow me, I am going to abuse your training as a journalist. When we have one last time, everything gets caught off. But I would like to tell you that that I do have a last moment. So this is why I wanted to interrupt you. A few years ago, our Minister of Foreign Affairs confirmed that he had taken the decision, talking with authorities from Haiti, of going back on that traditional Prohuerta project, which for a long time, for decades in Haiti, it left its footprint. And some time ago, within the framework of CELAC, we had a bilateral meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Haiti. He expressed that interest, and a few days ago, and that's why I'm speaking about that this last moment, and we have for sure people connected from Haiti that is perhaps interested. Argentina has taken the decision of going back to the Prohuerta model, which is a very successful model, and we're going to strongly work on that in coming months to come back with our beloved Prohuerta. I was just about to ask when, how, when we need these definitions. It's clear we're going to work strongly in coming months. That is the answer, but this is an important announcement because this was a program of great impact in Haiti, which was a source of inspiration for other countries. It left its footprint, its imprint there. So this is more than just a first answer to this question that we were making, which is perhaps I would like to ask from you the definition of spaces for increasing cooperation between Argentina and IICA to the benefit of the most vulnerable economies. There might be many more, but reaching the end of this presentation, I would like to ask Gustavo, but also I think it's important to have the opinion of the Director General of IICA, thanks to the work that IICA made with the countries towards this summit organized by the United Nations last year on food systems, and to somehow ask Gustavo to tell us how does all this fit into this priority that Argentina has assigned to its diplomacy for promotion of food security, which is a very important concept for the country and also for the presidency of CELAC. Yes, I'll be brief because I would like to yield the floor to Manuel to share on this. Argentina is a country that produces 10 times what it needs to feed its population. And I repeat, Argentina is a country that produces several times the food it needs for its own livelihood. So it's clear that one of the axes of our model of insertion in the world is related to these experts. We think that together with experts, what we need to work on, and this is not valuable for Argentina only, but for all the countries, which is that adding value to our experts. One of the pending challenges that Argentina has and the region as a whole is to provide its exports greater added value, scientific and technological, because not only is this related with the foreign currency that we can get, it also is related to the amount of jobs. If we export a container of soy, we produce 5 jobs. If we export a container of soy oil, perhaps we're going to be producing 50 jobs. And if we add value, we add jobs, we add resources for the state. And I think that that is the model that we have to replicate. The Argentinian government is undergoing this strong re-engineering process of the exporting capacity. We have to generate an exporting model that is not exhausted in primary products. The whole region has suffered this primarization process of exports, and I insist that challenge belongs to us. We cannot seek for those who are responsible out of our own region. It is us who must improve the quality of our experts to be able to compete in the world. Oftentimes, markets as important as the Chinese market, they get this number of agricultural products from Latin America. And we complain that this is totally primarized. This challenge is something that we need to work with our commercial partners. But I think that we must not continue looking for those who are responsible out of our own scope. Perfect, Gustavo. I think that this way we can close the dialogue. Obviously, I'm going to ask a final consideration to Manuel. I think that there are some important concepts such as new cooperation, new solidarity, also articulated joint work, governments, institutions, civil society, private sector. I wouldn't want to leave anyone out. This is very important, knowing that obviously we do not have all the answers, but we are aware that these actions are very important for building societies better than the ones that we currently have. I think that at least that's what I have left as, aside as the announcements made by the ambassador, is what I have left from this talk, that I hope you have taken advantage of our colleagues of IICA distributed by along 35 countries. This capillarity that you were mentioning, Gustavo, is also reflected in this dialogue. It reaches several places, and your words are later going to be reproduced by several different means and shared by the large network of experts that IICA has. And to wrap up, I would like to listen to the Director General. Thank you. Thank you very much, Guido. I reiterate your thanks, Gustavo, to our invitation. I would like to say that I make your words mine. I fully agree with them. And I once again ratify that wish of working together, trying to support the most vulnerable regions of our continent. Knowledge-intensive agriculture is coming, agriculture that has to have a human face. We need to end discussions in the agricultural sector, and rurality is a sector that is weakly in the economy. It's generating tremendous change. We are a region that the largest food exporting region in the world, and we are to be the main actors in this uncertain world. Of course, facing these new challenges of food uncertainty, nutritional uncertainty, environmental and power uncertainty, IICA has to be relevant by serving the countries, and thus I ratify our desire of continue building together with the Argentinian government its institutions, its bridges that are absolutely necessary, mostly when we think about the most vulnerable regions and where we need to create the conditions to be, as Gustavo said, to pose the right questions, which is the most challenging topic currently. Thanks to both, and thanks to all those of you who were with us from 35 countries, Europe and America, present in this enormous network comprised by that is represented by IICA, and we invite you to new dialogue within these events that IICA often organizes, which deliver important information and reflections to lots of people and in several areas. Thanks to all.
Gracias, Gustavo. Sí,